I now invite the President of the General Assembly, Her Excellency Annalena Baerbock, to address the forum. Excellency, you have the floor.
Your Excellency, President of ECOSOC, Mr. Secretary General, Madam Deputy Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to join you during this opening segment of the 2026 Financing for Development Forum, which assumes added importance as we look to maintain and mobilize political support for the Seville commitment in the face of immense economic headwinds. As the past weeks have made clear, in our interconnected world, what unfolds in one region echoes across all others, with deep consequences as highlighted by the Secretary General. Because of the crisis situation in the Middle East, oil prices have surged by more than 40%, rising to around $100 per barrel, with spikes above $110. The eruptions linked to the conflict have removed up to 1.5 billion barrels of the oil per day from global supply, driving sharp increases in fuel, transport, and broader trade costs. The disruption of fertilizers has exacerbated food insecurity for millions of vulnerable people across the globe. And the IMF cuts its growth outlook for 2026, noting the great threat of global recession. Yet, frankly, in moments of crisis such as this, some of us are more affected than others. Some have more savings in the bank for, as I say, a rainy day. Whether that rain day comes in the form of a conflict like now or a natural disaster like kind of any other day in these times, the reality is that some countries can weather the storms literally and figuratively better than others. They have stronger fiscal buffers, diversified energy systems, and better access to capital. Meanwhile, others were already facing structural constraints before crises hit. Constraints such as limited fiscal space, limited access to commodities, and high borrowing costs. They have neither the money in the bank nor the ability to borrow more at reasonable rates, and who are suffering the most vulnerable. For them, these shocks do not simply disrupt progress or come with a budgetary cost. They reverse development gains, deepen inequalities, and undermine stability. This is the reality of the deeply unfair international financial architecture we must confront, and why today's discussion is so important. Because financing for development in a crisis-ridden world is essential to ensuring all countries can thrive, trade, and prosper together. Debt sustainability must be front and center in this effort. In 2024, the external debt burden of developing countries reached $11.7 trillion. In 14 developing countries, debt servicing exceeded 20% of government revenue. These are resources that could be used to pay for healthcare or schools. When you hold those numbers against the fact that we need an estimated $4 trillion to achieve the SDGs, the gap and the impact of that gap becomes evident. But, dear Excellencies, dear colleagues, we all know this. The finance ministers with us today, to which we are very thankful, many of them have been in Seville, know this better than us. The world does not need us to rehash the same problems, nor does it need us to repeat promises already made, and certainly not to litigate them, reopen debates we just find a compromise and a consensus on less than a year ago in Seville. What it needs now is action, full stop. We need to deliver on the promises already made, not come up with new ones, not renegotiate text, and not raise hopes only to disappoint, because this goes also to the credibility of this institution in shaky times. And thankfully, there are more and more solutions being put forward to make our promises a reality. Consider the Borrowers Platform launched just last week. It aims to offer a tool for borrowing countries to collectively address debt issues through shared experiences, while also increasing access to technical assistance and capacity building in debt management. The goal is to coordinate approaches and give borrowing countries a stronger, unified voice in global finance. Consider also the proposed Debt Pause Clause Alliance, which, like the example I opened with, would support the suspension of debt servicing during times of crisis like now, be it a disaster or economic shocks, and build the fiscal resilience of borrowing countries. Or consider also the Global Hub on Debt for Development Swaps, which aims to strengthen the design and execution of debt swaps so that borrowing countries can maximize the potential of debt for development swaps. Each of these initiatives has immense potential, but only if they are implemented, only if we bring them to fruition. Excellencies, the Sevilla commitment has been made. Its adoption, including the 280 actions proposed, are a success story of multilateralism. And those of you who have forgotten about them, thank you for the book here from the Secretariat. We can recall them to all of us. Because the real work now goes on to you, dear ministers and representatives of all the countries. Each of these actions needs to be translated into concrete national-level outcomes with clear ties to national priority, domestic institution, and financial strategies. The many voluntary initiatives being proposed in the Sevilla Platform for Action, some 130 by last count, should be given even more inspiration to what is possible and empower government to take actions. Actions which, if implemented, can be a lifeline for dozens of countries and billions of people we are here to serve. Let us work in that spirit. I thank you.
I thank the President of the General Assembly